Good evening, and thank you for listening. You are Trapped in History with me, your host, Robbie Malcolmson. I've been a history teacher for 17 years, and I advocate for teaching of history philosophically, meaning we don't just learn about what happened, we wrestle with why it matters, what it reveals about us individually. Whether we like it or not, we are trapped in history. So let's get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Let's confront it, question it, embrace it, not just for ourselves, but for our families, communities, and future generations. And I have to admit, my guest tonight that I'm excited to introduce, I think he feels the same way, especially about historic battles and really bringing those alive. And that's why I really admire his connection with literature and battlefields. It's something I just haven't seen yet as I've been going on different things. But I'll quit babbling on here as I usually do and get right into the introduction. So tonight I'm joined by someone whose work captures that spirit that I was conveying earlier. His name is Charles North the Sixth. My first Roman numeral guest. I feel like I'm talking to a damn king. It's excellent. Creator of books and battlefields. He has a YouTube channel which brings historic sites to life while connecting them to literature, helping us see that the past is not just something buried in the ground. It's something we can walk through, read about, and reflect on. Maybe even wrestle with, as we would say, Charles. From visiting forgotten battlefields to sharing book recommendations, which I hope he does tonight, Charles helps bridge storytelling, scholarship, and the lived experience of history all together. Charles, my friend, thank you for joining me on episode 56.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be on here and talk about history, battlefields, and books.
Yeah, like I said, I'm excited because you hit all those categories I like. As I told you before the recording, is that
Mhm.
when I grew up, I got really into military history. When I was a child, I remember watching the Gettysburg movie series on TNT as a kid. As bad as the beards are in the movie, I just got hooked on it. I took a trip to Gettysburg. I remember being a senior in high school watching Band of Brothers for the first time. I got roped into all these kind of like military sort of thing. I think that's where my love for it and my admiration for it really started. So, Charles, if you're okay with it, I always like to start my guests on kind of your origin love story with history. And so, one of the questions I wanted to pop up for our visual guest tonight is really just what first drew you to history, especially the military side of history.
Well, for me, it was my great grandfather. Um, I can't remember a time when he wasn't telling us war stories. Um, and he was part of the 90th Division underneath Patton from Normandy to the Bulge. He was the 357th Regiment, Company G. He was a tough hombre. Uh, he was he got wounded at the Bulge and almost lost his leg. I remember his one leg was a little discolored when we went swimming. So his um, war stories told me all about it, and sadly, after he passed, is when I realized I should have asked a lot of questions. I was a 14-year-old kid doing 14-year-old stuff. And I had a close connection to him. I really did. I love my grandfather, my great grandfather. Uh, and he sadly passed, and I had questions I needed answered that I should have asked. So I went down that rabbit hole of um, answering those questions or doing my darnest to answer those questions. I even joined a Facebook group that shared stories of their relatives and loved ones and even veterans themselves. And I always kept trying to find my grandfather's regiment and stuff like that. And I met somebody over there in France who reenacts those uh, battles
Mhm.
of the 357th of the 90th Division. So he really helped me find a lot of literature and stuff like that. And I read like anything he threw at me. And one of the books is The War from the Ground Up, the 90th Division in World War II by John Colby. So that's my pride and joy, my cherished book. Um, but as I matured, I won't even say matured, I'd say as I got older, and I started taking my college history classes and stuff because I went to become a teacher. That was my goal, was to become a teacher and teach history, you had to take history courses. So I ended up actually being interested in like Vietnam, and my professor loved Vietnam, so I read a little bit about Vietnam. My grandfather was in Vietnam, so I was like, all right, let me read about my grandfather's. He passed at 24,
Mhm.
so I never met the guy.
Oh
So
man.
I had to do digging on that one to see what his time in Vietnam was like, and um, it grew into local uh, war. When my wife and I, we were still actually we were engaged when I first started doing battlefields with her. Um, I would do battlefields. I go to battlefields. Gettysburg. Gettysburg was the first one we did, and I was your typical tourist, but I wasn't your typical tourist. I still have it now. My Nikon camera I use, and I would just fly away taking pictures of the terrain as like I walk down the hill. I'll just do 360 pictures nonstop using like a I don't know 64 gigabyte SD card, where you can take 1,000 or more pictures.
Yeah.
I just have all of that, and I saved it on my laptop, and I would just back that up, and then do it again the next battle. And then when I went to the visitor center, I would always ask, "Hey, what's a good book you recommend so I can read about it?" And I did that for every battlefield I went to, and grew and it grew. And I remember for the Revolutionary War, I went to Fort Ticonderoga up in New York on Lake Champlain. That was my first like Revolutionary War experience. I met a friend I still talk to 9 years later, who's a reenactor up there, and I shoot text with him like, "What book should I read?" It was, and as I went to these battlefields, the more I fell in love with those wars. Not romanticized, but like I learned to love them and cherish them and want to, you know, talk about them. Uh, and then Civil War happened. With the Gettysburg stuff, and then more recently, War of 1812. My first War of 1812
Wow.
was in Niagara Falls on the Canada
Yeah.
side. My wife and I we celebrated our 3-year wedding anniversary. Went to Niagara Falls. Didn't realize it was a War of 1812 battlefield. Went to the museum. They recommended books, like I always do, uh, or I always ask, and visited Lundy's Lane. That you want to talk about very sad, not preserved, developed battlefield. I think that's the worst one I've been to, next to White Plains.
Oh wow. That's
Um,
sad.
it's like a square acre and some plaques.
Mm.
But then my most recent has been the French and Indian War, as we call it, but it's properly called the 7 Years' War.
Yep.
Fort William Henry, and I've been to Ticonderoga, did Fort Carillon because it was French before, and Quebec, which was Battle of the Plains of Abraham. So,
You've had quite the
every
experience.
yeah, and every one of those has been falling in love with more and more of the history. I've also have gone to battlefields and fallen in love with that rabbit hole from watching some YouTube content and going to those battlefields. So, yeah, it's just big old shotgun shell to disperse me everywhere but I pinpoint it with my great grandfather. That is the
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I was just about to say that with your grandfather and then your great grandfather before that. It's what's incredible about it is that you started down these rabbit holes. You were extremely motivated to find out more about both of them and their experiences, and look where it took you. It kind of reminds me of those cluster charts where you start with one idea, and then before you know it, you have this giant, almost umbrella of these experiences, and you're also making all these interpersonal connections with other people along the way. It's really quite incredible. When you look back on that, are you pretty amazed yourself? I mean, are you able to kind of step back and go, I can't believe it. I mean, you're a very young guy still, but are you already
yeah.
amazed at just what you've been able to experience in just that short of a journey that you've had?
I'm not even sure. I haven't even had time to like reflect. Maybe because I'm just so young.
Hey,
I,
wait
I'm
till you
still I
retire
still
someday.
see
You can write some memoirs.
I mean, I'm spoiler
Yeah.
alert, I am writing a memoir, but not on my history
Gotcha.
life. It's um, automotive journalism stuff. But
Hmm.
no, I just haven't had time to reflect on that. Like, wow, this is where like I haven't had time to even think about that. It's just been uh, I keep my eyes on the horizon
Sure.
because I'm wrapped up in now. The famous quote from Freedom Was a Highway by Jimmy Allen with Brad Paisley. My eyes are still on that horizon. So
Hey, that's okay. Are you able to have, I mean, do you feel as though you have the humility that while you're doing the experiences, can you feel as though you're taking in the value
oh
of that entire experience? It seems like it
yeah,
just by
yeah,
your
because
enthusiasm.
yeah, I learned at a very young age we are mortal. So I
Yep. Yep.
cherish everything. My knowledge, my family, my passion for anything, I am 100% in. I'm never in it for um what can I get out of it? It's
Yeah.
more of like
Yeah.
what can I learn? What can I pass on? What can I talk to my future grandchildren about or teach them about these and that, whether it be good or bad. Um, but the reflecting part, I always think back and I think this is something to remember. This is something to cherish, and
Yeah.
that's how I always look at wherever I go and whatever I do, be it
Well,
big or small.
especially since you mentioned earlier from a young age, and I did too, you kind of realize how um, important time is and not
Yeah,
to take any of that for granted. So I really respect that. Hey, I'm kind of curious. One more organic question beyond what we had planned, and
sure.
that is if you were to meet somebody, which maybe you already have, if you were to meet somebody that's thinking about undertaking the same experiences that you do, like going to many of these battlefields, also tackling the literature, but especially the battlefield part, uh, would you also offer them the same sort of advice that, the way that you kind of have the humility to look at, wow, I can kind of step back and see while I'm doing this, just how meaningful this is. I can tell that this is a very sort of monumental moment to remember in my lifetime. I guess what advice would you have for people that's like intending on maybe going the route that you're going, as far as how they should approach it psychologically?
I would say take it all in,
Mhm.
and if you want, take pictures. They last forever. But um, I would say for anyone who wants to jump on and join me and learn about the battlefields, do it 100%. Don't you get more pleasure out of it learning that you are doing something you love. You know, it's something that you don't take for granted. And don't take it for granted. Um, Taking it for granted just means that you're just wasting time doing something you could love.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's why I visit the battlefields. I visit overlooked battlefields even because they don't deserve to be overlooked. Um, Even the smallest skirmish makes a difference, and that's how I would want them to envision it as. These are places where people, you know, passed away. They didn't
Sure.
just, and it was violent. It wasn't
Oh yeah.
dying in their sleep. It was brutal. And you need to look at that with the humility as someone who should be grateful for being able to observe and look at this piece of land that's preserved or
Mhm.
um, and remember it and pass it on and remember that what you're passing on is history. It's taught and it's learned. And if if you don't If you don't, and it erodes and fades away, and it's
Mhm.
quicker than you know it.
Now, Charles, I mean, you seem like a modest guy, so it's okay if you're not comfortable answering this question, but do you feel in some way when you go to these battlefields, especially the overlooked ones, do you feel like you're honoring these soldiers?
In a sense, I do, because, for instance, close by to me is Mount Holly. So, um, there was a small little battle, but if you didn't know about it, you wouldn't understand its significance. Um, in the Revolutionary War, right before George Washington uh, went into Princeton, he sent a diversionary force down through Philly, came over Cooper's Ferry, went up through Morristown, and through Mount Holly, set up a uh, earthwork fort of a sort on a hill, which was a fallback position, and went up towards Bordentown to draw out Hessian forces, and they did under Colonel von Donop, and they drew him out of Bordentown, which made Trenton weaker. They don't talk about Mount Holly. It's brushed over in most of the literature I've read, and the book mainly that I've read that kind of gives a little bit more detail to it was, I think, the Hessians book by Frederick Baer, um, where Moore's talked about it than anything else. They say it was like an artillery duel, stuff like that, and I learned from local histories about it, and I even read it in a little Twitter X post, and I dug into it and found out more about it. But because von Donop came down with a force of like 2,000, don't quote me on that. It was between
Mhm.
1,500
Sure.
2,000, but the experts know their stuff than I do. But a good enough chunk of force that could have made a difference at Trenton wasn't there, and because von Donop was celebrating and he got distracted, let's just say, um, while in Mount Holly, um, those men, the brave men who lured them down and fought with them, there were casualties. Uh, Revolutionary War casualties aren't as numerical as Civil War, even
Mhm.
Mexican American War. But still, men risked their lives, and I find it utterly crazy and that, but courageous, because you have to be slightly uh crazy, I would say, to have to fight and fight, but maybe that's the courage
Yeah,
that these
maybe.
men had. So
Yeah.
I call it courage. Some people would call it crazy, but they're brave. They're doing for their country. They see something bigger than what's going on now that they're fighting for, and they took it upon themselves to have that strength and courage to do it. And the only way you can is to make sure it's remembered, and doing even the little ones, I feel, is honoring their memory.
Charles, do you feel like this is one of the challenges that people like you and I and many others have, is that trying to make these stories connect emotionally? Because I think we can both admit that for especially young learners and stuff, it's difficult for any of us to see numbers, especially large numbers, and feel this emotional impact. Like, we understand that it's devastating. We understand that people should never die in this way, especially in large kind of numbers. But is this one of the reasons why finding individual stories, whether it be primary or not, and kind of following individual, and I think Ken Burns does this well in his documentaries too. It kind of gets us connected to the whole, and maybe it inspires us enough to like chase down those rabbit holes, like the way you did with your great grandfather after his passing and your grandfather. And that's the question I kind of have for you here, is that, is this why we are so attached to stories, and that individual stories can be so captivating? Because maybe ultimately that is what opens up the door for maybe our interest to chase down the stories behind the numbers, I guess, is a better way to picture it. It's almost like I'm trying to remember what kind of experiment that was. I thought there was an experiment years ago where they filled up a train car with paper clips or something like that to
Mm.
try to show how many Jewish people died during the Holocaust, just so people had like this reaction to go, "Oh my God! Like I didn't know that that's what that many million. That's what like 6.5 million people look like, or something like
Yeah,
that." So yeah, I think you kind of get where I'm getting at here is that
yeah,
because you appreciate stories, you appreciate the literature side with the battlefield side, but do you think there's an art to that? Do you think there's somewhat of an art in a respect shown to connecting people to these battles, but having to do it in almost a way of showing sort of individual narrative stories in order to get there?
yeah. You can do that, and I see it as a great story. I mean, any battle can have 20, 30, 40 stories, all the way up to the hundreds of thousands of stories, all converging onto just one singular, and that's multiple times throughout even a month or a year. And we have these firsthand accounts of what they felt, what they saw, you know, all the human emotions that you normally would feel. And we have those firsthand accounts, or we even have the secondary sources. Um, and for me, it's like reading a good book that's so well written that you want more, and you can't get enough of it. And you like it's like a sequel, or you get a prequel. However you want to go. You have the sequels and you have the prequels, and you can go back, you can go forward, however far up and back that story you want to go. And that's those hundreds of thousands of stories you can delve into. And you have people who know how to tell those stories and
Hmm.
tastefully and respectfully do. That's why the authors of all the books I read, they're the experts. They're the ones
Yep.
that know their stuff, and the people who recommend me those books, they know their stuff. And even if they don't, they tell me those are the books to read if you want to know what you want to know. So I get a chance to not necessarily read about these books. I get to go see
Hmm.
these places, and I go see these places. I get inspired. If you read, let's say, Lord of the Rings, for instance. I'm not knocking the Lord of the Rings. I love the movies. I haven't read the books, but it's all fictional, or it's all not real. You can't go visit those places you've read about because they don't exist. The great thing about history is you can go visit those places. You can see the graves of the brave men and women who did that. It's right there, and you can experience it. You can see it. You can go to Joseph Plum's grave, who fought in the Revolutionary War, and you can actually personally thank him for his service. Even though he was a teenager who fought in the Revolutionary War, you can just go thank him for his service.
I
Or
mean, just imagine that right there, a teenager
yeah,
having to fight in something like that. Yeah.
yeah, he willingly did it.
Hmm.
He got permission from his aunt and uncle to go fight, um, when he was old enough. And or you can go visit Lincoln or you can visit Washington. You can visit Grant. You can visit all the greats. You can go visit Patton if you like. You can visit Winfield
Yep.
Scott, or Macdonough of War of 1812, or Oliver Hazard Perry. You can go and actually like to them. You can go see where they fought, or you can see where you know Grant had World War One style siege warfare going on at Petersburg or Vicksburg, or even like a similar what's to come kind of battle at Cold Harbor. You know, um, Gettysburg. Everybody loves
Mhm.
Gettysburg. It's a Disney world of battlefields.
Yeah. Yeah. It
That's
is.
why they call it, because it's so well preserved. Even Antietam.
No. Yeah.
You get to go to these places and you get to sit there and be like, "Wow, this." You take it all in. You're just like, "Holy heck!" this is beautiful, but sad.
Oh yeah.
I've been to so many beautiful battlefields, and it's still hard to believe that that happened, and these men would fought, and those all those stories, and yeah, they're just it's just astounding,
I
to
mean,
say the
if you
least.
think about it, it just shows you what level of, I mean, the meaning behind those battlefields, it truly resonates with you. You can obviously see that. And even if the listeners are not watching this and listening to it, they could hear it in your voice and your inflection, Charles, of like how meaningful those places are. Because I know on the surface, to some people, hey, this is just a field. Like this is just one of those things. And I
Yeah,
think maybe that's one of the challenges that you and I and others have is that we have to
yeah,
find ways of humanizing these sort of
yeah,
things. And it's just one of those things where I think sometimes time in history can cause us to become sort of dehumanize these stories. And I guess what I'm saying here, it's easy for us to go, oh, this person's way back in the American Revolution, way back in the Civil War, way back in the 7 Years' War. Like I'm not really like this person. And I think that it's very important to remember that these people that fought and died or didn't die, they still had hopes and dreams and aspirations. They had loved ones. They had a lot of the same similarities that we had. And I
yeah,
think the more that you can connect with those people and see how they are way more similar than you than different, even though we live in 2025, I think then that helps you truly start to make progress towards genuinely emotionally connecting to those battlefields and just the stories of the people behind them. And then, so if you're okay with it, Charles, I'm going to go to another question here about the battlefields since we were on this. And I'm
yeah,
just kind of curious, and for the listeners here, his channel of the books and battlefields, it doesn't just focus on the battles themselves, but on the places where they actually happen. I think Charles was already elaborating on that very well there. So the question I'd like to add to continue this is why do you think visiting these sites, and you listed off many of them you've already been able to go to at only the age of 32, but basically, why do you think visiting these sites in person changes the way that we truly understand history?
well, for me, it's visiting these sites and these places, and you know they epitomize the best and the worst of humanity, and to see where it all took place shows what humanity is willing to do. Um, and I mean that by for their beliefs, their where they stand, and honestly, where um, the best part and the worst part of humanity come together. Men fight, they die, and and it's not pretty. It's gruesome, and the things I think of at some of these sites first come to mind are the bloody angle at Spotsylvania Courthouse uh, during the Overland Campaign with Grant, and the other one is um Cold Harbor, you know, where Grant earned the Butcher title or the nickname. But then I look for the humanity in all of it, and the unsung heroes would be the nurses and the doctors and stuff like that. They're the ones, as I think in the movie with Andrew Garfield, where he refuses to take the gun. He's like, I
Oh,
don't,
Hacksaw Ridge.
they're Hacksaw Ridge, yes,
Yeah, yeah.
where he tells his commanding officer, or the guy in front of him, while the world's tearing itself apart, I want to be doing a little bit to put it back together. And that's what I truly look forward to appreciate. One of those examples for me that popped to mind is the Angel of Marie's Heights at Fredericksburg. He went out there and in between the killing field and tended to the sick, not the sick, but the wounded and dying. Uh, Gave them water, was with them on their last breath, stuff like that. I can't remember how long, but that shows that someone had humanity. And another one is kind of not necessarily, you know, uh, what's the best word for it? Not talked about, I would say. Uh, and it's often, I don't see it talked about much, and I'm wanting to get there, is Stones River out in Tennessee. I stumbled upon that battlefield because of um, I was inspired to go to Nashville and do Franklin, and I always look for local battlefields wherever we go. And Stones River popped up, and I learned about Stones River, and it is, by God, gruesome. Uh, and I learned the night before the battle, uh, there was this battle of the bands, and it was, one side played a song, the other side played a song, and then another side played a song, and then at the end, uh, one side played, I think, "Home Sweet Home," and then the other band joined them, and they both played, and then faded out, and then the next day was the battle. So,
Just right back into killing each other right after kind
yeah,
of sharing this collective sort of meaningful moment. It kind of reminds me of the archetype of the Christmas truce that I'm sure
yeah,
you're familiar with in World War
yep,
One. It has that
World War
similar
One,
sort of vibe to it. Yeah, yeah.
yep. So,
That's incredible. Maybe you and I should take a deep dive on that someday on an episode. It'd be fascinating. I never even heard of that. I mean, I'm just right in Southern Kentucky. I'm closer to those Tennessee battles than you are, and I had never even heard of that. That's incredible. So
exactly.
if you come on down to Tennessee, we'll travel some of these battlefields together. I did go accidentally one year. I was going to Memphis to see where Dr. King was killed at, to see Elvis
Hmm.
Presley's home, and I passed right by Shiloh, and I was like, "Holy crap!" I had no idea it was right off of the main road. It's like right off the interstate,
Yeah,
and so I had to go immediately right there. I had to tell my wife at the time. I was like, "We have to go. I know you don't care about battlefields, but I have to say I've been to Shiloh. Like
yeah.
it's an amazing one."
It's
So
on my
sometimes I
it's on
just
my checklist.
yeah, that's why I
Yeah.
love road trips, man. You just never know like what kind of excellent places you can stumble upon, especially around this area, as you know, in Tennessee, Kentucky, all these areas. You can go through Pennsylvania, and you can just there's all kinds of places you would not even know about. Like I didn't even know about the Battle of Sacramento, Kentucky. It was a very small battle, but that's another one I just stumbled upon, and all they had was a cornfield with a plaque. It was very,
Hmm.
very minimalistic, but you just never know. It just what kind of ground that we're walking on these days. Okay, so
Yeah.
Charles, if you're okay with it, we have a really great background now and an idea of what really connects you with it. It's incredible because I know you and I are going to take deeper dives in these battles someday. I hope later on, but
Yeah.
it's one thing to take these tours and they're already emotional enough. You're documenting them, and that's extremely powerful for you. But it's another thing to take those experiences and then you had the courage to go to social media. So I know that
Yeah.
for many people, as you know, the art of public speaking is one of the scariest there is, and in some cases, I think it's scarier than death for some people. And you know how social media can be; it can be very unforgiving, but it also can be very supportive. So one of the
Hmm.
questions I had for you is, let's kind of get right into like all these experiences you had. Now, it's one thing to go through those and to delve deep into respect your great grandfather, your grandfather, but then you decided somewhere along the line, hey, I want to share this, and that's what I gathered from a lot of your earlier answers. That you seem like one of those guys where you're like, people should go out and do these things because these are experiences meant to be shared, not just be by yourself. And I think people like you and JD from History Underground are phenomenal at this thing. And of course, History with Waffles with Chris Watts. All three of you, Gary Adelman, all of you guys do amazing work on that stuff. So the question I had to ask you, this we're getting to some personal stuff, and obviously in the future we don't have to take this route. But for me personally, this is really interesting as someone that has only had this podcast for a year, is what inspired you to ultimately make the leap into social media with your work? And what do you hope viewers actually take away from your work and your experiences?
Well, for me, it was the lack of sometimes the battles that I wanted to see. But it ultimately was me visiting these battlefields, and what I wanted to do as I visited them, I wanted to be able to share them with people. Um, as for instance, I was inspired by American Battlefield Trust. I love I love Gary Edelman's enthusiasm. It is
Yeah, he's awesome.
intoxicating,
Yeah.
his enthusiasm, and I I I I've I was inspired by JD and History Underground. I was inspired by Charlie with History with Waffles. There were a couple other people I was inspired by. Sarah with History Chick 1941. And I followed them all, and yeah, I always was the commenter. Hey, you should do this. Hey, you should do that. You should go visit here. And then it was always like I wasn't necessarily tired or sick of Civil War and whatever like that, because they're great. They're great with Civil War. They're great. I love them all. It's just I read so many books about whatever. I was like, hey, maybe you should check it. I got to the point where I was telling my wife, I was like, why don't I just share these battlefields? Because I visit War of 1812 battlefields now. I visit any battlefield. Like, I have a checklist of battlefields I want to go to, all because I was inspired by the books I read. So, like, for instance, I had uh, my one book on War of 1812 by Donald E. Graves is In All Their Glory Past. And that was recommended to me by the great um, people up at the Niagara Falls History Museum. I said, "Hey, I love War. I don't know much about War of 1812. What book do you recommend?" And they gave me Donald E. Graves' book on the War of 1812 and all their glory past. I was like, "All right, perfect. I'll get that." And I got a couple other books. Malcolmson is actually one of them. Uh, I, I doubt. I think the last name's spelled wrong. Or
it's
not
it's
differently.
spelled with we have with an extra L there, I think. I
Maybe.
found him before because
Yeah.
I get emails because I have the same name as him, as I'm Robert as well. And I
Actually,
think
it's spelled the same way. I just
yeah,
glanced through the
yeah,
book.
it's one of those things where I'll get emails sometimes that someone is citing my book and asking me if I'm okay with that, and I'm not
Ah,
the same guy. He's actually
yeah,
a lot different, older than I. But yeah, I've come across that too. It's a War of 1812 expert, I believe.
yeah.
So pretty shocking.
So I read about a few battles. I was like, wow, that's
Mhm.
intriguing. And I looked. I was trying to find I like doing research before I go to these battlefields
Mhm.
too, to see if anyone's ever done it. And over time, I was just like, no one's doing these battles. How come? And I was like, I saw that there was a lack. It was lacking in that. So I'm like, you know what? Let me do it. Um, and the first video I did was New Market last year. And I believe that video and those videos, the first couple videos I have, are like instructions or example of what not to do
I was about
for a
to
video
ask you, I was
first
like,
came.
how nervous were you really on those first videos? Because I mean, I imagine I would be very much so.
It's not that I wasn't nervous, because um, I feel like I'm more of like a open kind of person. I don't
Mhm.
mind, like, this is not the worst that's going to happen to me. That's how I
Yeah,
view
yeah,
it.
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
That's how I do it. I don't mean to sound not negative, but like, I don't want to say pompous.
Mhm.
Uh, but like, I don't view it as this is not the worst thing to ever happen to me. I don't not necessarily take it seriously, but like, hey, I'm doing something I love. Because
Yeah.
for me, I'm stuck in a warehouse. I work a warehouse job. I work two jobs at another auto parts store, and I wanted to do something I love, and I don't have anyone to share it with. And that was another inspiration that I want to share these battlefields with people. I mean, my family here, they only love it so much. You know,
Mhm.
we all have different passions in
Yeah.
life. This is mine.
They respect what you enjoy and you and
Oh
them, but
yeah,
it's not. This is not like their passion. I completely understand that. My wife
yeah,
is the same way.
yeah. So like, there's times when my wife, you'll see in my videos, I even did up cooking. I do cooking stuff. I have a culinary Civil War book that I do cooking with. You'll see my daughter sometimes, but it was lack thereof, and I want to share with people. I want to be able to, like, if someone's looking up um, going away, because this is what I do. That's my, not caveat, but that's my thing I do before when I plan. I want to learn about the battlefields. So I'm like, all right, well, Battle of New Market. Let me look up. There's a lot of videos on New Market. So I'll be like, all right, cool, great. I don't even know why I chose New Market as my first video. I think I was just excited to have a camera, and like I was using my
Yeah.
phone right here. This is my
Yeah.
This is my
Sure.
recording device, and now I've upgraded to an iPhone. Like this
Nice.
is my sister gave it to me because I'm on a budget, and then Charlie inspired me. I met him at
Mhm.
Cold. Was it Cold Harbor? No, it was down in Richmond when I was in Malvern Hill. I ran into him, and I finally got a gyro, whatever this is. I'm not
Sure.
tech
Yeah.
savvy,
It's all
so
right. It's all right.
you see my progression
Yeah. No,
with
it's
my
cool.
videos. Like you see, like, and I would ask my boss, and my boss also told me, "Yo, you should do videos. You love this history stuff, so do videos." And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm awkward behind cameras. That's why when I was an automotive journalist, I always did written reviews of cars. I always thought, like, I think I would look awkward. And my first couple of videos, I probably was a little not awkward enough. I was too, hey, I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
this and
Too
that,
over
this
the
and that,
top.
this and that, this and that, this and that. I mean,
Yeah.
like, my phone's like this. This is literally how I'm walking. I'm reading, walking backwards. Like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
this
Looks
this
more like a
happened.
Blair Witch video than it is a
Yeah,
documentary of the
literally, like,
battlefield.
I cringe at it, but I'm proud of it because I got that Band-Aid ripped off. Like,
Yeah, of course.
it was more like a good strip of duct tape, but
Yeah.
still, I was
Well,
like,
hey, though, man,
"Oh,
it's part of you think about it, though, it's part of your history, it's part of your evolution,
yeah,
and we can be, I mean, we can you and I could both be embarrassed or something by our first earlier things, but, look at it as you're getting better all the time, you're learning more, and you're networking, you're meeting these other people that can give you advice. I think it's
yeah,
great.
yeah,
And I suppose looking back, you're still very glad that you've done it, like, you've taken that leap, and you've been
yeah,
very happy about that, yeah.
yeah." My motto's always been, "You learn something every day. You never stop learning." That's why I read my
Yeah,
books. That's why, I finish a book. I barely go a day without picking another book and starting it.
yeah,
Like, I'm reading right now, Saratoga Campaign,
yeah.
1777 by Shawnigan P. Scully. I hope I didn't butcher his name. I was actually gifted from this lady who works up at Fort Ticonderoga. They were given these books by I believe the military when they did the 250th up there. They had these books for them, and she gave them to me. I was like, thanks. Like, now, and then I went on a book buying spree, and I asked some great people to recommend me some books so I can read up on or use for better content. That way I'm not telling the story wrong. So like I got here Battle of Saratoga
Yeah.
by Rupert Furneaux, and I hope I pronounced that right. I'm hoping I pronounced all these names right, but I think it's easy to pronounce Dean Snow
Mhm.
of 1777 Turning Point
Oh,
at
yeah.
Saratoga. So and then I found other books just to prepare myself for this upcoming video. Like this, literally, if I know you can't see it, I got one, two, three, four, five, six books here
Yeah.
One of them being from the American Battlefield Trust, because Saratoga was a turning point. The maps of the Revolutionary War. I use those kind of books. But if you see my videos, I've progressed. I just started even doing the music and an intro.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I just
That's awesome.
cut right to the
Just get
chase.
right into it, man. Don't.
Yeah,
No, I mean,
I'm not tech savvy enough to be able to do the stuff JD does, because
mhm.
I aspire to do that. I aspire
Yeah,
what
JD's on a
Charlie
whole nother
does,
level. He
what
told me
Brad.
on that episode too that I didn't know he had a background in video editing when he was on
Yeah,
like a hunting show. But you can definitely, because I asked him, I was like, "What kind of crew do you have?" He's like, "It's all me." I was like,
yeah,
"Man, if you
no,
got some like
I
B-roll footage that looks like it's straight out of like a Ken Burns documentary or something like that, it looks like it's really
yeah,
good quality.
yeah, and
Very impressive."
that that's what I strive to be. But I'm also been tempted to hire like somebody to do it for me because I'm not that tech
Yeah, yeah.
savvy. But no, they're my inspirations. I wanted to bring something to people that people don't know. But first and foremost, I mean to say is I have a passion for it. That's what inspired me.
Yeah.
I have a passion. There's uh, a want and need of that content. There's far and few, especially War of 1812, especially 7 Years War. There's not many people who bring that content, and it
Mhm.
deservedly so needs it. Um, you have smaller skirmishes, and I wanted to bring all of it to light. It deserves it, and the inspiration of going to YouTube came from the content creators, JD, uh, Charlie, history chick Sarah, and I can also thank my wife because she said she said to me that if it's something I love, I should go for it. She has my back, so I can't thank her enough on that one.
Yeah. Well,
Especially because she puts up with some
I'm
of it
happy
too.
for you, man. And again, Charles, like I really would be surprised if years from now you and I are talking and you have even more of a greater following. And I think one of the most one of the best parts is I hope that people watch this podcast and not just listen to it because you can just tell how genuine you are about it. There's no like fake or script to the others. And I think that's one of the things that I think so many of the listeners are craving more. And it follows up in our next question, well, too, is that in an era with a lot of over edited things that are produced and maybe even AI sort of things, I think what many of us crave, I know I do, is something that feels real, that feels genuine. And you have that type of like facial reaction and inflection and diction in your voice. And I think that's going to be really admirable. And if you also think about it, Charles, like that overlooked battle that you said that hasn't been covered very much, the content that you and others do, it will age very well because it's not like, for example, as much as I like sports, you know that I told you I went to the Indiana home football game last weekend. It's one of those things where a lot of sports podcasts, as great as they are, and they get a lot of views initially, they don't necessarily age super well. You know what I mean? Like, who's
Mm.
going to go listen to the aftermath post game report of this one particular game from 7 years ago? I do think that when you're covering these historical kind of events, I mean, you could have people years from now go, "Hey, I watched this video that you did on Saratoga. I loved it, and I got this out of it." Or like JD said this, and I'm sure you would agree, Charles, that you can go back to the same battlefield multiple times like Gary Edelman has, and you're going to discover new things about that
Oh,
all of the time. And it's
yeah,
like yeah, and to be honest with you, your whole attitude seems like the way you approach is you truly try to wrestle with it. And I feel like you're unraveling more and more every time that you do it. And again, I wanted to hit on the literature part if you're okay with it, because you
yeah.
already ushered in that and they had some great examples. I wanted to ask this question. It's kind of a layered one, but why do you think that books are still essential companions to going to these historical sites and not just going there, but really grasping the full, I guess, as much of the full context as you can, and maybe it's appreciation with it, but especially in an era dominated by digital media and the stereotype of short attention spans. I'm a little bit crossed on that because I do think, given the right medium, some people's attention spans are very good,
Yeah.
So to kind of blanket statement and say the whole generation has terrible attention spans, I don't know. So the question's a little bit illogical, but I guess in general, this goes back to our social media one. It's the last one that you and I will do, focused on the social media part. But I would love to see what inspired you to ultimately bridge that gap of, not only am I going to go to these battlefields like these people that I respect, rightfully so, but I'm going to bring in the literature side too. And all this research that I do, it's not to show off, but it's like you want to share that and why those are important companions. And I guess what I'm asking you is to tell our listeners, why are they important companions?
Well, for first and foremost, books are written by the experts. Um, Plain and simple. I don't go to battlefields claiming to be an expert. Uh, I am not a licensed battlefield guide. Um, so I am humble enough to know that I don't know everything. So I use the books because great time and effort were put into these. And if you ever look at my videos, I am sourcing them. I do put them in my description. Like, source book for this video is, for instance, Fatal Sunday. I have right here by Mark Edward Lender and Gary Wheeler Stone, because this book was recommended to me by people who work there. So I want to always give an excerpt of the book that tells the story properly. I know how to give my take. I know how I can give my thoughts, because the human side, I can give my emotion, I can give how I feel. Books tell you what happened, and they are thoroughly researched, they are thoroughly, you know, checked, proofread, everything. And you will rarely find a book that does not have anything false. Actually, I don't even read those books for the most part. I do have a very nice sci-fi book, not a sci-fi book, but one of those books where it kind of plays with uh, the uh, not necessarily romanticized, but it's what was, but it wasn't. It's just a really good book, and I really liked it, and it got me into something more than that. It's by Selena Baker, called The Line of Splendor, and it's about General Greene, who was Washington's right hand man. Without that book, I wouldn't have learned about General Greene. Like, I've heard of him, I didn't learn about him, but Selena still put in this great effort and time into this book by learning the kind of man Greene was, and she learned about him through letters, through sources, and she created him in the image and the man she believed he was, and wrote about him that way, and got personal with him, and like, because of that. And it wasn't false, but it's, you can say maybe that happened. But she does get specific with the actual facts. Like, he loved his wife, he loved his country, he loved his children, you know, and stuff like that. That's a great book, um, and a great example for that. And then I have like the Fatal Sunday book, and they are companions because of that whole um, giving the detail, sharing story, and they have the primary sources in them. They can talk about what the soldier saw that day, the bird's eye view, even from maybe General Grant in his memoir, uh, and you have uh, the details that anyone wrote about the battle firsthand, and they offer answers in detail that I can't answer. So, and I hope bringing these books to light and sharing them on my show and my channel, um, inspire others to read the books, because the books I'm recommending aren't just uh, and bringing on aren't just all right. This is a tactic that Washington used against Howe at White Plains. It was a bloody conflict. They got hand to hand combat, and the soldier said he could see destruction for however far, and he was overwhelmed with emotions and stuff. Like, that's great storytelling to me, and I want the reader and the viewer. Uh, I want the viewer to become a reader, and I'm hoping it inspires them. And I want to shine light on the author because they did take that time to because they did take the time to write this book because they're passionate about it, and they write it from a different perspective. They write it from a different vantage point, and that's what I would like to convey. Now, is it sometimes do I share sometimes I share more fact stuff too. Like, okay, like for instance, I use the American Battlefield Trust. They're the experts. I say, okay, so Green came up from uh, Trenton and helped reinforce Washington at Princeton, and this is the regiments that were there, like the First Rhode Island, the Fifth New York, stuff like that. Whatever the cavalry, or back then they were actually called dragoons, but and you have all these other aspects of the actual facts of who was there and what, and I like to try to bring that all together and present that to my viewer, and I hope that they become inspired to visit the battlefield because
Mm-hmm.
my whole thing with visiting battlefields is I want to help also preserve them, footage, stuff like that. I take pictures. I'm constantly taking pictures. I have thousands of pictures, but I hope to inspire the viewer to become the reader and the visitor, and that's what I hope that they get out of my videos because one, the camera doesn't do it justice, never does,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and I can only give you so much of the story. So I want them to visit. I want them to read about it as much as they want and as much as they can about it and see for themselves what they read about. Like, oh wow, this is the bloody wheat field, or this is bloody lane.
Mm-hmm.
Holy heck. And they get to see the terrain. They get to see the field. It's one thing to read about, it's another thing to see it. And I try to do both. I want it to be like not necessarily a niche, but it wasn't something I saw done. I wanted to
Mm-hmm.
bring that to light because there's some people that are experts and they have the knowledge, and I know I'm not knowledgeable. So I say, hey, I got the book here. Let me read a passage from it. Let me cite it down at the bottom because when you go to college, you know to cite your sources.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so I don't want to be ever told I plagiarized.
Oh
That's
yeah. Yeah.
my biggest thing.
Yeah.
But I just
I
want to be
think
like,
that
hey, I
fear
got
is always living in our head, and all of us that like history. Every time we do anything or we're citing something, I think that I probably overly cite. I think my source lines are like a paragraph every time I
yeah.
do one.
Yeah, I've even gotten it sometimes when I'm like on page 93.
Yeah, yeah. See, my students can attest to that. They would tell you how to drive them crazy, that kind of stuff. Charles, you the way you're bringing things up, even going back to where you mentioned about Green, it really seems like you honor and really enjoy finding out the person beyond the name or behind the name, like really what
Yeah.
makes them tick, and not just the strategic part of the battlefields. I think one of the stereotypes that I had when I was younger is that people like yourself and others, you kind of know all the military moves of the battlefield and kind of who is there, and that's all you're really studying. I think we forget
Yeah.
this human side of it. It's like you're saying, it's one thing, even for movies, it's one thing to study the 54th Massachusetts, to read about them, to watch the movie, the dramatic attack on Fort Wagner. But you had a great point on there in your rationale that you also just don't want to overlook it, no matter how movies convey or pictures convey. But to stand there on that beach or to stand there at Fort Wagner, like any other battlefield, Antietam, Gettysburg, any of these places. Of course, I only felt Gettysburg when I was 11. I don't even think I was mature enough to really take in fully what I think I would take in now. I'm pretty sure I would almost tear up at places like Gettysburg now that I am a father and I'm 41. So some of it might be a midlife crisis. I don't know what the hell it is, but it's just one of the things where I feel like I'm much more captivated by the emotional part. And Charles, I think you gave an excellent rationale for why the literature matters. And I think another way, not to like just to feed your ego anymore. I'm sure your wife would be like, "Don't do more of that." But it's basically I wanted to say is that I think that deep down I think that you want to honor not just the soldiers who had fought, but also these authors. You want to honor, like you said, the time that they spent, the research they did. These people are experts for a reason. And I think that a lot of them intended is for people like you to do what you're doing, is to truly wrestle with it, to delve into it. I like the fact that it seems like your passion is only causing you to dig deeper all the time. I mean, you held
Yeah.
up like 6 books earlier just for Saratoga. So it's one of those
Yeah.
things where it's incredible. And I think this question here, I know that you've already kind of hit on this, Charles, but this might be a great way of wrapping up, I guess, your emotional reasoning for what you do. And this is one that we had planned together. And for the listeners or the watchers, I wanted to read this off for you. Is do you think that visiting battlefields and can make us generally better understand the human nature, courage, fear, pride, tragedy, and our own moral struggles in our contemporary world now?
I think with visiting battlefields, helping us better understand the human nature, the courage, fear, pride, tragedy, and our own moral struggles today, um, it shows how much, I said this earlier, and how far humanity is willing to go for some things,
Yep.
uh, and to stand up for something bigger for themselves, and to go there and to visit these battlefields. They're not short walks in the park. They're long distance. Like, I know most people are probably familiar with that long walk to the stadium visiting their favorite team. You see that big old
Oh yeah.
stadium you're walking up, and you're just like, you're excited, you're pumped up. Take that, but the opposite. I could imagine charging an entrenched line, or just thinking through your head one last time. You hope it's not.
Yeah.
Uh, and just the human emotion in general of going in it, getting out of it. I would say more or
You would
less
never be the
I would
same
I
ever.
would count my lucky stars
Yeah.
getting out of it. But I learned somewhere that, you know, those who go home after the end of all these wars, they're the ones living with it. That's why I felt it important when I read the stories of these soldiers, to tell me, or the reader, war is hell. War is ugly, and it should never be romanticized. Charlie from History with Waffles and I are both in agreement. Visiting these battlefields isn't like, oh wow, like this happened and this happened, and oh, could you believe, and like, that's amazing, this and that,
Right.
and it's like how manly it is to die in battle, when
Yeah. How
in the
heroic,
in,
how
in the in the
honorable.
accounts it's like, no, like Bob over there just got stabbed in the neck with a bayonet, or Jim over there just got bludgeoned to death with a musket butt. I mean, sure, it's Valhalla in Viking terms and stuff,
Sure, yeah.
but I mean, what? No one ever knows what is going through the mind of the one being killed. You just know you're there for survival. And I I cringe at it. I don't I don't know how I would react. I don't know how I would feel. I don't know what to feel. I don't know what's proper to feel, and I think that's okay. But visiting the battlefields makes you feel emotions. It brings not it brings peace, but it brings acceptance. I feel to what we have now. Because if it wasn't for that, if it really wasn't for any of this, we don't know where we would be now. So to reflect on a battlefield and where men fought and died for their country, for something bigger than them, it can never be appreciated enough. And I think that is where people need to reconnect. It's a place where people need to reconnect with, wow, this tragedy and 100,000 other tragedies happened here. And the best example is Antietam. Best example is Gettysburg. Best example is any battlefield where people were willing to lay their lives down on the line in the name of something greater than them. And that's going all the way back to ancient times, not just now. Now, for me, this is my interest, American history. So there's people out there like my cousin who loves European history, and he likes diving into all that other stuff. But for me, it's American history. I like learning
Mhm.
about American history, but it's something that human nature can sit, reflect, appreciate, grieve. I believe there should be some grieving
Mhm. I agree.
because these are young, not entirely young, but a good vast majority of them are young. But either way, these men died. And some women, actually, I've seen some
Sure,
women
yeah.
actually
Yeah.
dress up as men just so they can fight. So
Mhm.
humanity came together and fought for their beliefs and what was right, what was wrong. You name it, however, and you have it where it's survival. And that's what it comes down to, and it's heartbreaking. And for me, I haven't gotten to Normandy yet, but I'm sure I'm gonna cry.
Yeah, yeah, me neither.
When I went to Spotsylvania Courthouse, I felt very heavy at the bloody ankle. Um, I've been to Devil's Den, I felt a little heavy. I think Spotsylvania Courthouse is like the heaviest I've ever felt. Next to that was probably Fort William Henry, and Fort William Henry up in New York is rebuilt. It was burned down. It went into disrepair, and the great historians up there, somebody got the blueprints of the actual layout of Fort William Henry and rebuilt it to scale properly. And a couple of things they modernized it, but it's beautifully done, tastefully done. Everything everybody's ever done to preserve these battlefields are tastefully doing it. And we need to also appreciate that because there's a lot of time and effort into saving the battlefields, preserving the battlefields because it's for our
Mhm.
consumption. And I wouldn't say it's infinite, but it is a lot longer than your YouTube shorts. It's a lot
Sure. Yeah.
longer
Yep.
than your books. It's something you can bask in for however long time allows you. And it's something that to sit there, reflect upon, and think about. That's what battlefields are for.
Charles, I don't even know what to add to that. That might be one of the more powerful things I've heard on my podcast, on any of them, this one or the 3-year philosophy one I used to do. I don't know what to add to that because I completely agree with you. And I could not have put it better myself on that. And you brought up so many good points. I mean, one could ask, how do we grieve people that we were not alive to be around or be close to? And then if we could, what do we do with that grief? A lot of this comes back to honor, but like in a real sort of tangible way. You also
Yeah,
are a great reminder that we need to be great for things like presidents and other people like Teddy Roosevelt and others did for preserving national parks, starting those, but also like these battlefields, because there's so much legislature that goes through, like you said, not only starting them, but maintaining them. And
yeah.
we're really the ones that are I don't even know how to say this right.
Bridge.
What do you call the people that take care of the cemeteries? I'm trying to think
Uh,
of. Oh,
talking
it's
about
curator is the wrong word, but if we're going to do a museum, it's almost like we are the curators of these battlefields, right? It's up to us to not let them these
we
living histories kind of fail and like fall apart.
even
And I think it's
yeah. I'm
I wish I
sorry.
could figure out what that word is.
I think we're just a bridge between curator and or the curator and preserver.
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
Because you got to remember, at least for me, my opinion, we're not the experts. The curators, they're experts. They get paid to do that, and the
Mhm.
preservationists and the preservers, they're the ones are putting the money and the time and all that other stuff, and we're in between. We're hey, here's a battlefield,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
also we're digitally preserving the battlefield and the stories. So like
Mhm.
that's why I say we're the bridge
Yeah.
because we're sharing both at once, and it's powerful. I I don't know if 100, 200, 300 years from now what it's going to look like. But at least we have these videos, we have these books, we have something to say this existed. And I think that's what the beauty thing is because we don't have photos of Athens. We don't have
You're right. You're right.
photos of Washington. We have paintings. We
Mhm.
have what looked,
Well, Charles, I
you
mean,
know,
I know that you're not as much of a European guy like I think you said your brother was. Hell, maybe
cousin.
that might be a good way to combine a podcast with you two guys. You get the American angle, he has the European angle. But
He's
in
never
a
up for
way
it.
to kind of yeah, in a way to kind of sum it up is that it's up to us to prevent another Library of Alexandria type of disaster, right? Obviously, it wouldn't be the same kind of in physical nature, but we can't let things like this fade and fail like what so many people thought for many centuries what happened to a lot of the ancient Greek and Roman texts and what did happen to a lot of them as they're gone. I'm a Stoic, or at least I try to study to be one, and there's really only like 3 writers left that you can find any kind of writings, although there used to be thousands of them. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things where all of these elements are mediums that you use to study and share these historical places and these ideas and these people. It's just extremely important. Charles, I have one more sort of emotional question to do here, and then we'll get into like wrapping up the show. I'll give you the last question I've been asking all my guests. It's been a great night. I still have a few questions I would left over that we can come back on another episode later and give. But I guess this would be a great way. Like if you were giving a TED talk, which you're kind of doing that in a way here, Charles, in a way. But I guess if you were, I do a law club. I work with training students on how to be like lawyers and witnesses in mock trials. So I guess what I'm asking you here with this question is, give me your best Charles closing argument. If you're at the O.J. Simpson trial kind of one, and you're giving that last closing kind of argument, like in that kind of a fervor, I guess the question I want to ask you, and emotionally speaking, is what do you think the modern audiences risk losing if they stop engaging deeply with history, if they stop reading, reflecting, and visiting these places where it happens? If all of us buy it together to start to stop doing that, what do you think we risk as a modern society? And then I guess I'm giving you the platform to give me your best sort of argument and why we can't do that. I'm assuming that you're definitely on that side.
I believe that we risk losing how history was actually written, starting with the books. Um, Landscapes do change. You can't stop a hurricane from ruining a battlefield or a tornado, but um, reading, because you never stop learning, and you need to have that hunger to learn. Um, and when you read, you have your inner voice reading the book, unless you're the type of person that reads out loud, which is fine. You know, you find your own way of reading, but you could sit here, you could read a book, get done with it, and then you reflect on it, and you can say, you can go through all the thoughts that go through your head, like you can be inspired to visit. That's what happens with me when I read books, and I get inspired to go to Plattsburgh and stuff like that. But you lose the true meaning behind history and historical events. You We don't know what happened to the Native Americans. Like, what I mean by that, like stories. They're all oral histories. They're all orally spoken about, and it's doesn't feel like it's too late, but it's just like how that saying goes is where you say something to somebody and they're supposed to say it to the next person, and then they say it to the next person, and they
Mhm.
say it to the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
person, and it
That's
goes
the,
on that
like the
chain.
telephone game or the elephant game where you keep passing down, it keeps changing the story.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
eventually
yeah,
it changes around, and eventually somebody mixes something up, and
yeah,
they believe that's how it happened, and at the end of the line, the message that was said in the beginning, the original message, is stale. It is completely different. It is soured, and just because it was lost in communication, it was lost in translation, it was lost, and that's where and the reflecting comes from. And it starts with the reading. It starts with engaging in conversations like this, and visiting those places is a very perfect cherry on top, because not only do these battlefields have their place, they belong in our society. And what our place is, they're like battlefields, people gather at these battlefields. So you and like-minded other people should engage also in reflecting and talking about it. You can learn things from other people, because guess what? I could have went to Plattsburgh. I like saying Plattsburgh because that was like, holy heck, I got to Plattsburgh. Like, it was a quick turnover, and it doesn't get talked about enough. It really doesn't,
yeah,
and it
yeah, yeah.
frustrates me. But I could be at Plattsburgh, and I get to the spot where it overlooks where the naval battle happened between Downey and McDonough. McDonough's the American, Downey is the uh, British guy, and I could be there. I could be looking at the picturesque view where the naval battle happened, and someone could come up right next to me and be in the same kind of, like, you know, all kind of just taking it all in and reflecting. And then I can say to this person, he was killed in like 15, 20 minutes, right? And then the person be like, I never knew that. And then that just right down that rabbit hole and talking and reflecting about it. And then I could be, it's almost every time I go to a battlefield, I'm always talking to somebody about that battle. And it could be their first time, it could be their 30th time. I'm always running into people who are going there for the first time. And it's so cool because I tell them, like, hey, I got a list here. Check out here and read about this spot and check out this. I always point them in directions like, hey, don't forget to stop here. Check this out. Check this
Yeah.
out. Check that out. And we get to sit there and we get to talk about it. I learned something new. They learned something new. And that way people are telling me, what what got you here? I'm like, oh, I read the New Jersey and the Gettysburg campaign. I learned about the New Jersey regiments in Gettysburg. Oh, what book? I give them the actual book, and then they
Yeah.
read.
Yeah.
They're reading it.
Yeah.
That
It's like the
communication.
ripple effect. I mean, you're making all these connections. That has to like further your passion, right? Like when you have those kind
Yeah.
of interactions with people, I'm sure you leave just even more excited than you were when you even got there.
Oh yeah,
That's
for
so
sure.
cool.
Especially
So
after I
cool.
talk to somebody, because nobody I know except for like my cousin, because I bring him up. I love him,
Yeah.
but he's the only one I talk to about history because no one else loves
Yeah.
history like I do. So him and I bounce back and forth. But then who is it that said you don't want to have a echo chamber?
Yeah. Yeah. I can't
You
remember
want to
who
be
it
able
was,
to
but I know what you mean. Yeah.
share it all around and talk about it everywhere else and have other knowledge come to you. If you don't talk about it, you're never going
Right.
to receive that knowledge. You're never going to share that information. So if you're not engaged, if you're not,
Yeah.
you know, it doesn't even matter if you're passionate. If you're just engaged, you learn. You get to
Yeah.
pass that on. You
But
get to pass
Charles, it,
that knowledge.
it seems like the common denominator here throughout your whole entire podcast with me is it really comes down to passion. Like if you have that passion, the motivation will be there. I mean, the willingness to take the jump or dive down a rabbit hole. I guess I shouldn't say jump. I think for you is more of a head first dive on that
Yeah,
stuff. And look what it's gotten you to, and look at the connections you've made through people. If you're
yeah,
okay with it, Charles, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up kind of where we're getting at here, at least for our
sure,
first episode together. I do want to leave you with the question on the episode I did with Bob and Mike recently. It's a question I
sure.
want to ask at least all my guests for the kind of near future at least until I feel pretty satisfied with it. And the question I thought we would leave our audience tonight with is just overall now, not just with you only with battlefields, but I guess the your macro view of history and why it's important, why it means to us. And I think you've already hit on this in many ways tonight. This is another way of kind of wrapping that up. But in general, I don't know if you agree with me or not. Based on what you said, I think you agree with me. But maybe you have a different word for wrestle. I've had a guest before, Preston Stewart, who has an amazing YouTube channel and TikTok where he covers the current wars that go on. He told me that he wouldn't necessarily say the word should and he would imply it to something else. But I want to ask you the same question I've been asking everybody and myself is why should we wrestle with history?
We should with history. History, I believe JD actually said a really good answer for it, but I want to follow up with my own. Um, History is something that is embedded in our very self.
Like the fabric of our being, just in who we
Yeah,
are as critical
it's-
thinking beings.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's human nature to look back at the past, regardless. You can look at history as yourself. You are told, at least from what I know, on like your deathbed, for instance. And I don't want to get grim here. You
No,
don't
it's
think about
okay. I
you
know
don't
you.
think
I
about
kind of
the
see where you're getting at. Yeah.
you don't think about the chances you took. You think about the chances you didn't take, or the things you didn't do, and the regrets. Uh, you know. So you kind of look at it like you end up having to accept it. But another thing about wrestling with history is it it's also like a mirror.
Mhm.
You never get to avoid one. And history is a beautiful, tragic, inspiring work of art. And the frame around it is just time, and it's ever expanding. And we have the luxury of being able to reflect, and it can be ugly, but we just need to accept it. And we have our moments in history where it's ugly, but if we don't wrestle with it, we'll never learn. History, Ken Burns said that someone, I believe it was, I might have want to attempt it, but Ken Burns said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. He said that in the, um,
Yeah, I've heard him say that multiple times too in some interviews this last
yep.
year.
And that was in the interview I was at with the American Revolution one. It often rhymes. Uh, so we can pick up on patterns. And if you don't pay attention, you could be influenced either way of how you can view it. And my history professor said the great thing about history is that you can look at it from any vantage point, and you can attack it at any vantage point you want because it's a big old circle around it. And that's the beauty of it. You can look at its ugliness, but you can't just look at its ugliness. You have to be able to look at its beauty. You have to be able to look at uh, all of the other aspects. There's it's it's
But as you know, sometimes it's easier for us, I conclude myself, to look at the things of beauty or at least the good things because it makes us feel better. And
yeah.
this is one of my things here recently kind of reminds you of Nietzsche's looking into the abyss. Kind of, I mean, but to be careful because the abyss will look back at you, sort of
Hmm.
thing. But it's one of those things where we do have to come to terms with our darker side of history, the things that we're not
Yeah.
proud of as Americans or as humans. And then we may not have been alive when it happened, but like I think you would agree, Charles, to an extent, it still had to do with what makes me and you and others who we are. And
Yeah.
it helps us, like Ken Burns would say, all of this, the good history and the bad history, it helps us figure out who we are and who we are as Americans.
Yep.
And
And
I
how
think
we
that
got
that's
here.
exactly. And I think
You
it's
know.
it's I think it's important that we don't look away. We should look at it and try to figure out how to form a narrative around it and
Yep.
make sense
And
of it and rationalize it.
yeah, and that's the only way to look at it. You
Yep.
have to look at it at all angles. You can attack it at different angles, but you need to look at it all angles to get a better
You're right.
understanding. It's just like this little plaque here I got from work, this little tiny gem. If I look at it just like this, just
Mhm.
looking at it one way, I'm only ever seeing it that way, right?
Yeah.
If I observe it like this, I get to see the whole, you know,
Yeah.
aspect. I get to see it. And for this is actually a physical.
Yeah. So you're saying it's important for us to make sure that we step back and get more of a macro perspective
Yeah.
of something. And you brought this up multiple times tonight too with your literature that you've had and you've been studying, and that is just the importance. And like you said, you sound like a true historian. Is that multiple points of view matter extremely, like they are paramount and really truly getting to the depth of an understanding. And like
Hmm.
you were saying earlier, there's always more. There's you know. I had a student ask me like a week or two ago. They go, Malcolmson, don't you ever get tired of teaching the same thing for 17 years? I go, no, actually, because every year I'm trying out new things, new strategies, new different kind of students, new things that they say. But it feels like no matter how many times I do the same topic, I can teach about Martin Luther and the Protestant Reformation for 17 years, like I have. And it seems like every year I find out something new that I had no idea the year before. And then I always feel like more embarrassed and dumber about how I used to teach it. I'm like, gosh, I was like, how did I miss that thing that's
Look
there.
at you evolving.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it's kind of cool to see our own personal history kind of evolve. Hey, I wanted to leave our audience with like two small, shorter, like quick hitting questions, Charles. If you're
Sure.
okay with it, we'll wrap it
Yeah.
up. I want the listeners to know that my three philosophical questions that I usually end with, I am going to put those in the show notes. They're a little bit longer. And I don't want Charles to like sit there while I put them on the screen and read them. We're not going to discuss them, but maybe it could be something that he and I could come back and discuss later, or maybe off the air. He and I will probably text each other tomorrow back and forth. So I'll send him some voice memo of me doing an 8-minute soliloquy over what my answer is for these. So if you're okay with it, Charles, you and I will continue this off air just to save my listeners' sanity of not hearing my Kermit the Frog, Ray Romano voice for any longer than what they had to. You have a much better speaking voice and everything than I do.
I
But hey,
appreciate it.
I mean it, man. But here's one of the things I wanted to leave with. I think that's a small question. Because I know that you appreciate literature, you're probably one of the few people that can actually ask this question with. And it's not one I gave you ahead of time. I wanted to see like how you would answer it. But this is one of my favorite books of all time. So I said, what type of value is there in historical fiction? I said, for example, one of my favorite books is Killer Angels by famously Michael Shara. And I know that his son has done excellent work as well. By the way, I think I might have misspelled his last name. I think it might be two A's and
Sure.
an R-A, something like that. But I know he's done a phenomenal job with Gods and Generals in The Last Full Measure. But I know that these are historical fictions. But as a guy that loves nonfiction like I do, what type of value do you still think historical fictions like Michael Shara and Jeff Shara's work and others has done? Do they still provide extensive value even though they are fiction?
Yeah. I can come right off the bat
Good.
saying yes. Uh, that book about General Green,
Yeah.
by Selena Baker, The Line of Splendor. Let me grab it real quick. Right here.
Yeah.
I would not have actually found an appreciation for General Green because it's not like I talk to Selena from time to time. It is not like Selena is writing all willy nilly anything and everything under the sun about uh, General Nathaniel Green, like whatever she wants.
Yeah.
She's not writing like, oh, this day General Green he took a bath and whatever,
Yeah.
and he
Well,
was drinking a
she's not
whiskey
trying
and
to
whatever.
speculate
Yeah,
certain facts about him or things about him that's really
yeah.
not true,
She
but still trying to add character to
yeah
who he might have been. Yeah.
she added depth,
Yeah. Nice.
tastefully, tastefully added depth to one of the most overlooked generals of our revolution. Right here, I I have been what do you call it? Not radicalized, but I have become a very fond supporter of General Green,
Yeah.
and he needs to have more um, recognition than he
And
gets.
maybe you could be one of many people that tries to kind of does that, or at least I guess in a way, it's like you and I on our small internet corner of the world. We try to just do the best we can, and then maybe hopefully it resonates. I mean, I know you will and are doing it, but I guess you and I both. At the end of the day, we try to hope that what we do resonates with at least one person in a meaningful way, because maybe that
Exactly,
ripple effect will multiply later, like a really good pyramid scheme. That's something like that, like a meaningful one instead of a
exactly.
Ponzi one.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I know Michael and Jeff Shara, if I'm pronouncing it right, and it is double A one R.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, yeah. I think I
I'm
misspelled that.
looking right now here at Jeff's because this is I picked this
Oh,
up
yeah,
when
yeah. There you go. Yeah, I've wanted to have that for a while too. Yeah.
I picked this up when I was in Old Fort Jackson down in Savannah. That's another battlefield you got to go to.
Yeah, I've
Fort.
heard
It is
Savannah's incredible. Yeah.
it is beautiful. But um, no, Jeff and Michael Shara, they're putting in that time and effort too. They're just adding substance,
Yeah.
So they're being factual, and yet they're adding that, okay, wow, this, and they're doing their research. Or, as I said, with like Selena, she's not just willy-nillying her character up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She uses personal letters. She uses firsthand accounts of what type of man in general Nathaniel Green was. And
It's
Jeff,
almost like a forming almost like a narrative FBI profiling of what these people are actually like,
yes,
because it's
yes,
really getting to the essence of their core. And I guess more, I mean, that's the thing that's so powerful is these people like her and Jeff and others and Michael that can find ways of bringing these people that have been dead for a long time back to life in a way,
yeah,
if you think about it. And I know Jeff mentioned this in an interview, I think, with Jared Frederick on a real history episode. I want to say it was one of those that, his father, before he died, I don't even think that he got to see the fruits of his labor with the movie of Gettysburg after killing
no,
Angel. I know that he was helping with that. I think he died before it came out. But I think that, Jeff found such a wonderful way to continue on what his father had done in the way he wrote. He's done many books other than just even Civil War ones. We've also seen this recently, a book that I highly recommend to you as someone that appreciates World War II. My favorite World War II memoir book, which a lot of people are, is With the Old Breed
mm,
by Sledge. And his son, like Henry Sledge, has just brought out last month or 2 months ago, like his book extending from that. And it has
mhm,
all of the notes that were cut out, like hundreds of lines of notes that were cut out of the original one. And as someone that loved the first one, I loved Helmet for My Pillow. These kind of books, it's like you just said there, they find ways. Those are obviously built on nonfiction, but they find ways of bringing people's stories alive. And I think that's why I love what Jared says about movies. Not all history movies are obviously good, but if they can provide even an inkling of inspiration for someone to chase down and start studying more. For example, I was a little disappointed in Gladiator 2 compared to the first one, but
sadly, I haven't seen them.
hey, for many kids though, like they might get hooked on it and go, "Hey, I'm going to dive down a huge rabbit hole of that particular history." And I think that's one of those beautiful things about the dichotomy between Hollywood. It's really the dichotomy between entertainment and fact, and it's got to be this delicate balance. And a lot of times, as you know, people are going to take liberties in their writing and their filmmaking
Hmm.
because it is a film. It is for partly entertainment purposes as well
Well,
too.
yeah,
And
it was Hollywood.
yeah, but it's one of those things where I still have to think a lot of it because it inspired me to even go down. I mean, maybe I'm not even a history teacher for almost 18 years without any of that one way or another. And hey, here's the one, and Charles, you're just like me, man. I'm usually reading like 3 books at the same time. And I have
Yeah,
so many
I'm
books
not reading these.
here.
I'm only reading one at
Yeah,
a time.
yeah.
I
I have
can't
books
juggle.
here and at school that I still have so many books I've never even read. But I love used bookstores. I love going to. I have a membership to Barnes and Noble's, Books a Million. I'm not even sponsored by any of that. I just plug it. I mean, one way or another. It's just because I see so many things that I want to read and I want to do
Yeah.
that. So I'm going to ask you a very probably the most difficult question for you of the whole night is
Oh
going to be one
gosh.
that says I want you to see if you can recommend to our listeners what's any recent book that you want to recommend to us? So, as our last thing that we'll talk about tonight, what's one that you
Oh.
think many of our listeners, just in general, would appreciate, whether it's military or not? What's just something that's even one of your favorite books of all time, or just something recently that's really hooked on you? And I'm gonna have a hard time with this recently too, but there's got to be something that's just really sparked you recently, and then maybe every time you're on in the future, because you seem like somebody that would want to come back later is maybe every time you're on, you do another recommendation. So let's hear the
Oh.
the Charles recommendation for this episode in episode 56. What do you think we should pick up and read at some point? Because more than likely, I'm
Okay.
going to order what you recommend, and if I'm disappointed, I'm going to send that back to you with a very stern but fair message inside of it.
Oh.
So, what should I order off of Amazon or go to
Okay.
locally and kind of get? So I see you looking at your library back there. If you're listening to the audio, he's literally like digging through the
Nope.
bookshelf.
I just had to find it.
All
I
right, all
think
right.
I have. Okay. I have my if you're listening right now, I'm sitting at my desk. I have, it's a really nice desk, big, it's
It's a
arm's
great
length
office. It's
each
a great
side,
little area you got there. Yeah.
and it's like this big. And this is just my camera. Behind the camera is 4 shelves with books on personal, more or less, kind of like my top shelf is memoirs, nothing else, or biographies. Over here to my right, which is the camera left, that is my 7 years French Indian War books, Revolutionary War books, and my War of 1812 books. And I have some right over here. I'll let you take a
Oh,
gander.
cool.
Right here,
That's
I have
wonderful.
MacDonough in that top corner.
Hmm.
I have the North Bridge at Concord painting. I actually met the painter who did that. I got these
Awesome.
from a yard sale. Ticonderoga stuff, everything here. That is my 7 years Revolutionary War and War of 1812 books. That's that bookshelf here. To my left, camera right, that is Mexican American War to Civil War to Spanish American War to World War One bookshelf. As you can see, a lot of Civil War books, and I've gathered
Yeah,
these
yeah.
by visiting the battlefield and having the book recommendations. And then my favorite shelf is actually going to be, I'm giving you a little tour, is this shelf right here. This is my great grandfather's personal hat that he wore with his division on it, with the Tough Hombres 90th
Wow,
Division.
that's incredible.
And that is D-Day, stuff like that. I'm giving a little tour. I can't believe it, but
I love
World
it
War
how
One.
a book recommendation question has now turned into a tour of your office.
But like this is
This is
this
awesome.
is
This is
this
it's
is
great.
this is World War Two. Don't mind some of
Yeah.
my Christmas stuff, but this
No,
is
it's
like
okay.
World War Two right here. I got the rifle. Those are some great recommendations. Forgotten by Linda Hervo. The Women with Silver Wings. Um, but here is Korean War, and then lower I have Vietnam over here, and some more modern stuff over here. And then I bought myself, these are gloves from the Korean War. My sister bought me a piece of the Berlin Wall. This is the actual watch right here my great grandfather wore
Yeah.
during the war, and a pocket watch he took off of a soldier.
Wow.
And then
Gosh.
some of this stuff here is like, this was my grandfather from Vietnam. This was his
Hmm.
cigarette lighter, and a couple other mementos that I've gotten.
Yeah.
But the book, I'm sorry
Yeah.
for
See,
going on such a
what's
rant.
the book, man? What of
So
all the
I'm
ones you
sorry.
can pick? It's
Building up.
the first one. There's nothing like the first one. You gotta
All
be
right, so
clutch.
I'm do a little drum roll.
There you
This
go.
is, I tell this to everybody. I put it on my recommendation list. I just had to find it when he told me. It is James McPherson's For Cause and Comrades. This is a must-read book. I will give it to you as my first recommendation.
Okay. Okay.
It
I
is
will
not that
definitely be
long of
looking
a
that
book.
up.
It is not that long of a book. It is
It looks short. Like it looks pretty relatively small.
this copy. I have it. You can find it in my YouTube website.
Okay.
The link for bookshop.org. You can even find it to Second Time Books, who I partnered with, who helped me get books for the
Yeah.
battlefields, and I have a special thing going on with them. Um, it looks like it is under 200 pages, and I am very um, sacrilegious with writing notes in books, but
Yeah.
I'm very against it. I
Oh
really
man,
hate it.
that we finally
Um,
found something that you and I strongly disagree on. I
and,
am I look like my books look like a serial killer wrote in them
but
because I
this is the only book I've ever written in.
oh wow, well
This is the
that
only book
means
I've
something
ever
then.
written in. Uh, it was already written in, so I said, "To hell with it." Pardon my language. So, like,
It's all right.
I
Yeah,
wrote
we use
here.
language on this podcast.
I wrote here all on this page about Fredericksburg. I said this battle was lost from the get-go of the attack. Took too long to get those pontoons to cross the Rappahannock. Stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I even wrote on the back. Oh, it's a note to the next person to ever own this book.
That's awesome.
And I dated it May 18th, 2024.
Wow.
That's the note I left
That's
to the next
cool.
owner.
Look at that. This is rare. This will be for our viewers the only book that Charles North VI has written all over it. He will
Yeah.
refuse to do it anything else. Now,
And
hey,
I
I'm,
only
I'm
did it in this
curious.
one pen because that's my handwriting.
Yeah. So you seem like a note taker. So are you a lot like Ryan Holiday from the Daily Stoic? Like, do you take a lot of notes while you're reading, but do you do it like on an index card or separate, or do you just store it up? Man, you must have a really good memory because I
Oh,
am such a slow reader. I have to like I have to have it.
I am a slow reader, not by choice. I have been stuck on page 70 in this book of 115 for the past 2 weeks. Out of
Oh yeah,
I think it's 115 because my work
yeah.
demand. So I could have finished this. I did a book like this up at White Plains, and I did it in a day, not even. And I retained as much as I could, which was pretty good actually. But my memory for everything else, forget about it. I could recall some of this stuff, and I'll have to like be like, all right, let me check real quick. Oh yeah, that's
Yeah,
what happened. Right? Yeah, then I'll just get right into conversation just like that. But no, this for
yeah.
cause and for
So
comrades.
hey, if we buy it there, like, are you okay if I put my? So I just looked up the link for the actual like the book that you're recommending.
Mhm.
If our listeners buy that book from your website, I would assume that helps you, right? Or are you
It,
just
it
sharing
it
the
helps
link of a?
it helps me a little bit, but
Okay.
it actually helps more or less the author. Bookshop.org.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like I said, I'm going to put that link in the show
Yeah,
notes. I'm going to put it in our private chat just so I can bookmark it. But
yeah,
whenever we're done and we're editing, I'll put this link for that book, and I'm going to order it myself because I want to be able to read it and talk to you
yeah,
about it. And I'll order it on there too. So I think right now it's 21.43 on paperback where I'm seeing it. But I've heard of
yeah,
James McPherson before too. So I have never read that book. I'm excited because I mean, like I told you, I really enjoy the Civil War. And it's a guy that's a history professor. This seems really interesting. So I think it sounds great. So I think that I will definitely highly recommend that for our listeners. So Charles, I guess this is a good place to wrap it up. My daughter is wanting to head to sleep. I can hear her getting froggy in there, and
okay.
I think I need to do a pit stop myself, man. I don't know about you, but but hey, like I said, this has been great. I hope that you've enjoyed your first podcast with me. Would you be willing to come back in the future?
Oh yeah, yeah, for
Awesome.
sure. Like
Awesome. Like I said, we'll definitely have you back soon. Like in this year, like I think it'd be great to have you come back on here again.
have
I
me on
guess
as
it,
often
this,
as you want.
yeah, awesome, man. I said, I hope you're okay. I got your cell phone number now, and I can just annoy the crap out of you. We're
That's
going through
fine by
history
me. If you
stuff.
ever want to
Hey,
talk
like I said, you
history,
said it earlier. You're like, hey, I don't have that many people to talk history about. I was like, well, you got another one now, so we can help each other out. And like I said, I'm about to after Christmas. I'm going to. I know I do a very European focus right now, just because I teach AP Euro, like a college course. But
mhm,
after Christmas time, I am going to start going into some more American history with that. And I would like to do more military stuff because that's what I really enjoy. But I don't get the luxury of doing that in public school because
mm,
of the way the classes are. But the good thing about a podcast called Trapped in History, I can do whatever the hell I want to do. It doesn't really matter on that
yeah,
thing. So for anything that's going with the war history stuff, and I guess I'll ask you this is, are you okay sometimes covering maybe wars that you don't have literature in? Are you okay with that, even though it may not be one of those wars directly that you have in your library or
yeah. If I don't
okay?
have it, I always get it.
Okay, cool. Well, you know what would be cool too is maybe even tackling some literature together. Maybe you and I could do like a literature review over a history source because we could do that as well. I even looked up the laws on like copywriting, the what I could actually bring up from sections for sources or passages or quotes and stuff. But anyway,
Mhm.
Charles, we'll finish up this episode. We're almost on 2 hours. We've kind of done a Joe Rogan ish or Lex Friedman sort of length. Hopefully,
Sadly,
it
never
didn't feel
listened
like
to
two
them.
hours. Hopefully, it felt great. I thought you did an excellent job, and I had a blast. Like I said, it didn't feel like 2 hours for me, and it's a
No,
great thing for people to kind of listen to on their way to work or on their way home from work, or they just really like history. But Charles, I hope the listeners, even if they didn't watch the video, I hope they can pick up your just general enthusiasm. Like it's just so much fun to see someone that I feel like is as enthusiastic as I am
Yeah.
Sometimes, sure, from time to time, me and you can probably annoy people with our enthusiasm. And it
Oh, I know
reminds
I
me of
do. Oh,
it
I know
reminds
I
me of The
do.
Office, where Andy's like, "I'm sorry that I ignored you with my friendship," but it's one of
Yeah.
those things where, yeah, it's cool because it's just fun to find people like this. Because something I always tell my students, and I end my episodes on, is about being contagious. And where it comes from is to be positively contagious in what you're doing in your life. And I feel like when it comes to doing the battlefield stuff, people like you and Chris Watts, Gary Edelman, I feel like guys like you and the female. I'm sorry, I forgot what her name was. What did you say the influencer's name was?
Sarah, the history trip
Sarah, yeah, I
1941.
need to look up her work. But the work that all of you do, I strongly admire it, and I feel like the more I can have you all on, and the more I can watch and see what you all do, it's just going to make me better overall as a historian, as a teacher, hell, even as a husband, a father, brother, like all these things. Ultimately, it's like you said earlier, we're trying to figure out who the hell are we? Like, who are we? Where are we going? Like, what makes us who we are? Charles, do you have anything lastly that you just want to leave our listeners with before you come back the next time? Just overall about your experience, anything you want to say?
Well, just stay tuned for in a couple weeks when I roll out. I'm heading up to Saratoga. If
Yes.
you ever want to tag along on my Instagram, my X,
Yeah.
Twitter, I like calling it Twitter. X is
I
just
get it.
weird.
Twitter X. I'll say Twitter X
Yeah,
sometimes. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
hop on over there, follow me if you like to even follow me with my book recommendations. I post up things with
Yeah.
what I'm reading, so like you see what page I'm currently reading on that
Sure.
book
Yeah.
that I find interesting. Hopefully you do too. But then stay tuned for my YouTube channel and subscribe because I just love sharing this history content. And the more people I feel that see it, the more people will fall in love more and want to go there.
Yep. Well, that's Books and Battlefields on YouTube and other social media outlets. I'll put those in the show notes as well and try to link those for people. This has been Charles North the Sixth, probably my only guest for a long time, with a Roman numeral that goes to sixth, which is extremely impressive. That is a first in my life, my friend. I just really appreciated you just investing your time. Like me, you're a father, you're a husband, all these kind of things. You work two jobs. I don't know how you do it, Charles, but I strongly expect it. It's been one of my favorite episodes I've ever done, not just with Trapped in History, but the 3 years that I did Knowing You Know Nothing, which was a philosophy podcast. I've had lots of interesting people on, but this is one of the most fun episodes I've ever
Oh,
done. So just thank you so much
oh,
for everything
thank
that you did.
you.
All right.
I greatly appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. And then to our listeners, as always, keep questioning the past in order to understand the present and be contagious.